In this video, I'm going to try and show you how to make hyper-realistic 3D renders of disc golf discs with custom artwork. So this is an example of one that I did previously. You can see right here I've created a disc. We've got our club logo here, and we've got some cool lighting effects. And so I'm going to show you how we did this. So we're going to start off in Adobe Illustrator. You can see right here I've got my stamp artwork, and I have this page from the Innova catalog. So in this video, I'm going to make as realistic anyway of a destroyer that I can. So I am going to start out with creating a rectangle that I know that a destroyer is about 21.6 centimeters. Now, this doesn't have to be this accurate, but, you know, just for the sake of seeing if I can do it, I'm going to do that. So I'm going to just click on here with the rectangle tool, and I'm going to say it's a width of, what did I say it was? 210 millimeters. And a height of, you know what? I had that up a minute ago and I have put it away. I'm going to look at the specs for the destroyer. Now, I mean, you can't really say for sure because some destroyers are dummy and some aren't, but destroyer specs, and according to Infinite Discs, so the diameter is 21.1 and the height is 1.4. So I'm sorry, I'm going to say this is 21.1 centimeters and this is 1.4 centimeters. All right. So that right there is going to be the size of our disc in profile. Now, what I'm going to do, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that in half because I'm actually only going to make the profile from the center out to the edge. So I'm just going to grab my line tool and I'm going to draw a vertical line, and I'm going to align the two of them. And then I'm going to grab the line and I'm going to go to Object, Path, Divide Object below, and then I can throw away, the half of this that I don't need. Okay, so this is half of our disc. This will be our center edge. This will be our wing. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, well, actually, I should start by creating one more rectangle. And I know the rim width of this thing is 2.2 centimeters. So I can create another rectangle, and we'll say that this one will be, the width will be 2.2 centimeters. The height will be the same as the last one. And so this will give me a reference point. So I can just line those two up on top of each other. And then I can grab them, and I'm going to say arrange, bring to front. Okay, next I'm going to find the destroyer here. And I am going to scale this down considerably because, well, but I want to constrain the proportions. I need to probably get rid of the fill here so that I can see through. And I can zoom in here. And once the width of the rim is the same here, then we know that our proportions are good. So I need to come in a little. What the heck? All right, let's undo that. We need to bring this one in a little further. And that's pretty close. Now I dare say that our height maybe not as accurate as we had thought. but that's okay. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this rectangle. And now I'm going to start, I'm going to push up the top plate a little bit so that I don't end up with a funny looking angle. And I'm also going to hit Command 2 to lock. Oops. It would help if I had the right object selected. Let's select the background here and hit Command 2 so that we don't move the background around here. And I'm going to get the pen tool. Going to start over here, but then I'm going to move this to the corner. This way I'm not actually affecting the corner of that rectangle. I'm just on top of it. And then I'm going to bring the pen tool to about the edge of the wing diagram here. That's probably okay. And then if you've never used the pen tool in Illustrator, it can be a little challenging, it's true. But it is the best way to draw a shape like this. All right, and now we got to kind of, that looks probably about right. And then we're going to close this. Okay, so now we have created our disk profile. We can unlock the background and we can get rid of it. There we go. So here is our destroyer. Again, this is from center out to the wing. Now I'm going to put a fill on this. It doesn't need to be anything too particularly dark. Just going to put a light gray on it. And I'm going to get rid of the stroke. Now the next thing I'm going to do is grab this object and I'm going to go to Effects, 3D, and I'm going to go to Revolve. So the default for revolving is revolving around the left edge, which would give us a really funny shape. You would see if I were to look at this, you can see we've got not a disc shape. But if I change this from left edge to right edge, all of a sudden our disc looks a whole lot more believable. So if I do look at the bottom, it's hard to see the rim, but that's just because of the lighting. If I go over to the lighting tab and I say I want more diffuse lighting, you can see the rim right there. So let's go back to the object here and let's just say we want the front. It doesn't really matter here. What we're going to do with this object is we're going to go to the Asset Export panel. If you don't see it in your panels here, you can go to Window and you can turn on Asset Export. And then I am going to grab this object and I'm going to drag it over here to the window. And you can see at Asset 1 here, I'm going to rename this Destroyer. All right, then I am going to select the Destroyer here, and I'm going to go to Export. I need to make sure that it is an OBJ format. All right, and then I hit the Export button. And it's going to allow me to export it. So I'm going to go into this disk models here and we'll say a new folder and it's going to be Destroyer. And it will export. Great. So now we have an object file, which we can now use to build our scene or our render in Adobe Dimension. So I'm opening Adobe Dimension here. And we can just go ahead and create a new file. And so if you haven't used Dimension before, it is a way for you to create photorealistic 3D mockups. they have a whole mess of different models already imported here. So if you want to do like a soda can or a coffee cup or a takeout box or something like that, you can. But in this case, we're going to import the OBJ file that we just made. So I'm going to go here to File and Import 3D Model. And then what I need to do is I need to find my destroyer.obj file here, and I'm going to open it. Now, when it comes in, it is going to be huge. So we don't need it to be that big. I'm going to go ahead and resize it. So the first thing I'm going to do is constrain the proportions so that when I resize one of these dimensions, the others will snap into place and I don't have to do the math. So we'll just say this is going to be like 30 centimeters, which is a foot. So the scale isn't going to be 100% perfect, but it really doesn't matter. Now, under the Actions panel here, we've got this Move to Ground. Because right now, the object is actually below the ground plane, and that's because we just scaled it down, and it scaled down even with its, I don't know. Anyway, you just hit this button, and you're going to be right dead center on the ground plane. A great place to start. Okay, so if we look over here, we have our models as our first tab, and then our next one is materials. So we are going to try plastic. Now we can set a base color for that plastic, so we can decide what color our disc is going to be. So let's just say that we are going to go with, I don't know, a bright green destroyer. So something like that. Okay, now once I come in here, so I can set the opacity. So if I was, for example, going to make like a champion one, I might, drop the opacity down here. And then we start to have our, our semi-transparent discs. But in this case, let's just assume it's going to be a star plastic, which is opaque. Now, what I can do is I can add a little bit of roughness. Not a lot of roughness. It's pretty shiny. If I put it to 0, basically it has a mirror finish, and that's not 100% believable for the plastic. It's going to have a slight amount of roughness to it. We're not going to add any metallic of this metallic attribute here, but you can see what it does is it makes it look like it's metal, and it's also be much more reflective. You can add a glow. We're not going to do that either. Okay, so we've got our plastic sort of dialed in here. And then the next thing on here is our lighting. So we can we can do any number of different lighting scenarios here. This comes with several. But what I'm going to do first, I'm going to hit the number 1 to get to the orbit tool, and I'm going to kind of look at this from an angle. I don't know. I can figure out what angle I kind of want to render this from. And you kind of have to use some of these keys to move around and kind of get a sense of, just getting everything the way you want it. I actually kind of like the way the lighting here right now. But if we wanted to say put a square light, you can see here when we go into our lighting, we've got the environmental light, and I can change the intensity or the rotation of the environmental light. I can talk really. You can see the shadow coming over here, so we could change the rotation of that, and you'd see the shadow. Oh, actually, that would probably be the directional light, but you can see that our highlights here are moving around the disk as we move the rotation on our environmental light. And if we go to our directional light, I can increase or decrease the intensity. So, I might blow out any detail if I put it up too high. I can rotate that light as well, and you can see there the shadow moves with it. Also, I can change the height. So if it's up pretty high, we're going to have short shadows. If it's really low, we're going to have long shadows. As I said, this is looking pretty good. In fact, I may just step back to what it was. There we go. I like that. Okay, so that's our lighting. and we can add a scene here. So you could, like, for example, throw this in a gallery, and you could actually try and match the image. Obviously, the scale here is not quite right. And for a lot of, like, if we're doing something for an e-commerce website, we're actually not going to have a background. We want a white background. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn that off, and I'm going to, yeah, I'm going to get rid of that. And where did our background go? That's our lighting. Here we go, environment. There we go, turn off the background. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is add our artwork. So when I've done mockups before, I've always come up with a vector file like this, and I've added the gradient right here in Illustrator. I'm going to try something different this time. I'm just going to give it a color. So I'm going to give it sort of a gold color. And then I'm going to, I'll save this as, let's see. Nope, we don't want that one. We want disk art, and we'll say gold. I'm going to click on the model, and then in the actions panel here, there's place graphic on model. So I'm going to go find that graphic that I just did. There it is. And I'm going to place that on top of the item, on top of the disk. Now, a couple of warnings. You're going to want to look at this straight on in order to place this, because sometimes it places it way off center. And then if I click here on the graphic and then go to the move tool, I can actually kind of size this thing. You can see it's not necessarily centered, but the artboard itself may not have the graphics centered inside of it. So I'm just going to try and do this visually. You can see there's the center of the disk right there. It looks pretty close to the center. I have had some of these start getting all wonky when I move them around, and this one just seems to be acting the way that I would expect. So that's a pleasant surprise. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of move this into more of the position I want. Now this is just a yellow print on a green disk, but what we usually see, we see foils. So in this case, I can turn this into metallic. I can crank up the metallic here, and then you can see as I move this around, we get that cool effect. And yeah, I'm not going to crank it up all the way because I don't want it to look completely black when we're off axis. But okay. So now let's just say I want to export this for my website. So what I can do here, I can get an angle, and then I can go here to the camera bookmark, and I can say, okay, this is top down, and then I can move to another angle. Maybe I can get this one right here, and I could say this is going to be profile. And then I'm going to move to another angle. And if I said, for example, this one is oblique, and then I'm going to like get in real tight here. And we'll call this one close up. Now, this is rendering in real time as you're working, but it's a low quality render. If you look at the edges of the shadow, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, on YouTube, but it's pretty rough. What I can do is I can click on this button here, and it will start doing a quick render. And as long as I don't change anything, it will just keep rendering here. And it can give me a kind of a good idea of what I'm going to be looking at. But as soon as I move anything, then it's going to go back to kind of the quick render so that I can actually edit in real time. I'm going to turn that off. I'm going to go over here to the render panel. And then I'm going to say I want to render the top-down, profile, oblique, and close-ups. And I want those to be the high quality. It's going to take a little bit of time, but I'm okay with that. And the file name is going to start with Destroyer. And then I'm just going to go ahead and hit render. And so now this is going to go ahead and render these out, and they're going to be Photoshop files when it's done, which I can then crop or manipulate however I want in Photoshop. And it will be pretty cool. So I am going to skip ahead because it's probably going to take about 10 minutes on my computer to render. The render time is going to really depend on your hardware. I am at the time of this recording, I'm using a 6-month-old MacBook Pro that's got a pretty beefy GPU. So it will go through it reasonably quick. But if you're on an older computer, this might take a little while. So, but it's okay. Set it. Go get a cup of coffee and come back later, and these will be done. Okay, so now we're back from our render. I've got Photoshop open here, and you can see here is our top-down image. It's looking pretty good. The effects, like the shadows and everything, they're really holding up right until the point where I get in there and it's starting to pixelate. So I'm pretty happy with the way that looks. Here's our close-up. Here is our oblique. Here is our profile. So if I was going to put these onto my website for e-commerce, usually what I'll do is crop these to a 1:1. So I just need to kind of center this and crop it. And then, well, the main product shot would be a square. I wouldn't necessarily do that for every image here, but there we go. So now I've got images. They look great, and they're layered. So if I go in here, you can see I have, well, these are all kinds of layers that I don't really need. But if I want a transparent background, you can see I can turn that off. They've given me 2 different renders. One apparently has reduced noise. I don't really see the difference, but okay. If I put both of them on, then I just end up with darker shadows because the shadows are transparent. But anyway, that gives us some really good looking files, and hopefully we can get the mockups that we need. If you're having to create these for pre-order or something like that, it can be really handy. And plus, it's just a lot of fun. But maybe I'm just a nerd of disc golf and software. Who knows?